Rules, policies, and guidelines. Which one of these should be adhered to the T with no room for interpretation or changes? I'll answer that and more coming up next. Good Mark TV morning. Now, before I answer that question that I just asked, I want to share with you a quick story, and maybe you can relate to it. You have the same thing going on where you are. Where I live, there's a number of stores and restaurants that offer student discounts, and all the person has to do is walk in and show their student card to show that they are in fact a student, and then they're entitled to get their discount. Now, I should tell you, it's not really much of a discount, but when you're a student, well, any discount's a good one. Now, in this instance, an individual walks into one of these stores, an individual who happens to be a teenager, and they make a purchase, and before paying for it, the clerk behind the desks asks if they have their student card so that they can get a discount. The person buying, the customer, the teenager, says that they forgot it. They don't have their student card with them, but could they get the discount anyway? And the clerk behind the counter says no, that discounts can only be given to students, and to prove you're a student, you must show your student card. Now, the weird thing here is that if a teenager walks into a store, well, if they're not a student, then what are they? And here's what makes things really crazy is the student card is simply shown to the clerk, and the clerk processes the order. I mean, it's not entered into any record. There's no scanning that takes place. It doesn't impact the purchase in any kind of technical or procedural way. The clerk just looks at it and says, okay, I see that you're a student. But the reason they want to see the card is because that's the rules. They're following the rules. And the rules say you have to look at the student card or see that there is one before you can give a discount to this 15 or 16-year-old person who is obviously a student. So to answer my first question at the very beginning of this episode, between rules, policies, and guidelines, which one of these should you follow to a T? Which one should you not have any variation or interpretation of? The answer is none of them. That's right, not a single one of them, when it comes to business anyway, should be made the rule of the land, the law of the land, words to live by, things that you just have to do under any circumstance. Now, to add some clarity, let's dive in a little deeper to those three things: the rules, policies, and guidelines. So let's first talk about rules. Now, rules, well, when it comes to law and kind of, daily life, yeah, rules are in place. You got to follow the rules. If you don't follow the rules, you'll get in trouble. Now, in business, though, rules, as much as people would like to believe that they're in place and have to be followed, in most cases, the rules, especially those that are implemented or created with regards to how things are dealt with when it comes to customers, well, you know what? Not everything can be set, in stone, because not every situation is the same. And in many cases, these rules are created based on a unique set of circumstances. So back to the whole student card thing, they put in the rules, which initially made sense because they didn't want the clerks giving student discounts to people who were clearly not students. But if a teenager happens to walk into a store, perhaps even wearing a school uniform, they're obviously a student. And asking for the card almost becomes pointless. I mean, it's redundant. You can see this person's a student, but it's a rule. And as most clerks will tell you, they have to follow the rules. After all, they're only making like $6 an hour, and that's not enough to empower them to view the rules or do something differently. Now, while rules can be important, when it comes to dealing with customers, there's so many variables and so many different situations that to stick to a set of rules is almost impossible. Which brings us to the second point, that being policies. Now, policies are really interesting because by definition, a policy is sort of a set of informal rules. Okay, they're not really rules. They're more like things to do in certain situations. So, for example, you'd have policies regarding when someone returns something, whether you can give them their money back or not, or policies regarding how you treat customers in certain situations. They are simply, influencers. They're simply there to help and guide the clerk or the store manager or the employee into understanding the parameters that they can work within in making a decision. Now, the problem is that so many employees and retail clerks tend to treat policies as rules. And if you've ever tried to ask for something or do something or request something at a store and they give you the response, sorry, that's not our policy, you'll know how maddening that is. Which, by the way, that's our policy. 4 words that no clerk should ever say to a customer under any circumstances, because the customer doesn't really care. And the truth is, most policies aren't written to help the customer, they're written to help the business. So it's important that everyone working at a restaurant, a store, or really any business, and they interact with customers, to understand that policies can be flexible. Policies can be interpreted. Policies can be changed, adjusted, acknowledged, applied in varying ways depending on the situation. That's why they're called policies and not rules. Which brings us to our final point, and that being guidelines. Now, guidelines are the least formal of the 3. A guideline, think of it simply as a box, like an invisible box, and within the box, you can do pretty much whatever you want. So the guidelines kind of tell you what's outside the box and what's inside the box. And in this case, thinking inside the box is not necessarily a bad thing. Because if you didn't have guidelines, people would be able to do anything they wanted. You'd have clerks discounting products just because they feel like it. You'd have people giving returns on products that they may not in fact sell. You'd be perhaps even selling products you don't have. I mean, it's ridiculous. People would just kind of do anything. It would be business anarchy without some form of guidelines. Now, I believe that guidelines are the most important of the 3 when it comes to customer service. When you're calling a company or approaching a company and you have a problem, and maybe the problem is unique to you, maybe it's a problem a number of other customers have experienced, it doesn't really matter. The fact is, they should be using guidelines to help deal with that situation. They should know sort of what's within the box and how much they can move and what decisions they can make and what they can offer and how they can deal with the problem working within the parameters of that box. Policies, not a good idea, because in most cases, the policy may not fit the situation. And of course, rules, never a good idea when it comes to customer service, because rules aren't about customer service. Rules aren't about reacting to something. Rules are to create order. And order is great when you want to keep people from shoplifting, or you want to organize your merchandise, or make sure your employees show up on time. Those are great for rules. But when it comes time to making a customer happy, to creating a great customer experience, really, rules have no place. Policies have very little place. You should be focused on guidelines. The next time you're dealing with a business and you're having a problem and make a request or ask for something specific, and they say to you, sorry, that's our policy, you send them to me. You tell them that Mark Gordon said policies have no place when it comes to customer service. Now, have you had a problem like this? Have you had a business say to you, that's our policy, and they wouldn't help you because of rules or policies or whatever they wanted to lean on, to resort to, because they weren't empowered or didn't want to make the decision that needed to be made? Yeah, if you did, share it with me. Post a comment down below. I want to know. And you know what? If I do a future episode and I reference your question or your comment or an idea that you have for a show, I'm going to send you a Mark TV baseball cap. Now, if you're watching this on Facebook or LinkedIn and you want to watch more Mark TV episodes, head over to marktv.net. If you have any questions or comments, post them down below. You know I'll answer back. And you know what? If you like the episode, give it a thumbs up, or even better, click subscribe if you're watching it on YouTube. So until next time, I'm Mark Gordon, and you've been watching Mark TV.